I play a character named Janine Matthews, and she is the head of the erudite faction, which is the faction, it's considered the intelligence faction. Well, each faction, stands for a particular virtue, and Janine she has a very scientific, intelligent mind, and it's her desire that erudite will be the governing faction, whereas at the beginning of the story, the governing faction is abnegation. So she is doing everything that she can to attempt to sort of out them and essentially take over the world. It's pretty much her goal. So she's a very clever but not necessarily nice piece of work. She's a master manipulator. I mean, it's a character that was created by Veronica Roth, so it's very much her brainchild, and it's been fascinating for me playing someone who is quite blatantly cunning and manipulative, because it's not really in my nature at all, and I've never really played an evil person before now, so it's been fascinating to try and get inside the mind of a person like that, who is almost like she's almost like a Nazi, actually, in a way. You could almost say that she's a sort of a female Hitler. She wants to keep the faction system pure in its purest form. So that means making sure that young people are absolutely making the right choice for them, the choice that they believe in, that is their true and possibly higher self. But she's also realized that there is such a thing as a divergent. And a divergent is an individual who has a strain of every single faction in their blood. And of course, to Janine, divergents are not pure. They are really ruining the system. And the only way, of course, for the system to survive is to exterminate the divergents. So that is her master plan. The thing for me that was the most fascinating about this story is that we as human beings, we all want to count for something, come from somewhere, and to belong. Whether it's a family, a cult, a religion, a group of friends, whatever it is, we all want to belong somewhere. And that is what this film is about. It's about establishing these 5 different factions, families. And you have to choose to belong to one of them. And if you don't, or if you're cut from your faction, you are nobody, which is, I think, everyone's fear. It's all of our fear, that we would be ostracized from society, or friendship, or a class, or a group, or something. And we fear, I think as human beings, we do naturally fear being left out, or other people's judgment, and I think it's hard in the world that we live today with so much media exposure, I think, available to young kids, and so much in terms of the viral world and phones and iPads and all of this stuff, that paring it all back and just being a person, being an individual, I think is even more challenging for kids now than it was for me when I was 16 years old. And so to me, this film is really striking because it's very much about belonging somewhere and making that choice and making that commitment. And there's a hell of a lot to be said for that. There's a very basic values. So that's why I think that it is in some way quite different to a lot of the franchise pieces that have been out in the last 5 years, because it has a very strong, fundamental sort of moral message, I think, at its core. That doesn't necessarily mean it's better, it just means it's different. And for me, that was the most interesting thing about this.